Hello, welcome to tonight's Travel Talk, Uganda and the Gorilla Trek. I am Kate Sanders with the OSU Alumni Association, and the Travel Talk series is our way of connecting the people of Oregon State and the places we go with our travel program. Tonight's Travel Talk is focusing on one specific trip, Uganda. I had the opportunity to travel on this tour just a few weeks ago and wanted to share some of the highlights from the tour. We are offering the trip again next year, and this is the slide here about the trip for next year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. For those of you that are new of joining us tonight, check out the recordings of some of our other travel talks online. You can visit fororegonstate.org/travel talks and stay posted on new upcoming talks with experts from across the university. If you are new to our program completely, we welcome everyone on the tours, alumni, family, and friends. And the best place to find the trips is online at fororegonstate.org/travel. There's a mix of all kinds of tours, land tours, riverboat tours, train trips, cruises, and there's also some exclusive Oregon State departures, as well as departures with trips with other partnering institutions and universities. And when a tour sells really well, a professor or a university or an alumni association representative like myself may join the tour, and they provide additional educational content about the destination and the university. So not only are you learning more, but they also assist you with tour logistics and help ensure that you have a great time. Now for tonight's talk, we have a few guests joining us. The first one is Flaxen Conway. Flaxen is a repeat traveler of ours, and she's here to help us add some great of her experience on the tour. Flaxen, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, Kate. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining. And then we also have Sandy Doss. Sandy is with Mayflower Cruises and Tours, and she is here to help us answer any questions that we might have about this next trip in 2024. Do you want to say hi, Sandy?
This is such a treat, Kate. I cannot wait to hear all about your recent adventure. We can't wait.
Great. Okay, so now on to the talk. So Uganda and the Gorilla Trek. So the trip next year first, I'll give you a little bit of heads up. It's August 15th through the 24th, 2024. And this is the same trip that we just did. So everything that you're about to hear about will be very similar experience that you'll have next year. The tour we started, well, we went to Africa, of course. So just wanted to give you some greater context of where we went in Africa. So we went to Uganda, which is located kind of right on the equator in Africa. And then in Uganda, to give you a little bit of a history about it, Winston Churchill coined the phrase that Uganda is the pearl of Africa way back in 1908. And it was his way of convey the beauty, the variety of Africa and of all the people, and he loved it. So Uganda got the independence from the UK in 1962. And then after independence, there is definitely some years of struggle with the central government of Buganda, which eventually Uganda got its name from. In 1967, tribal kingdoms were established by Milton Obote. And then there was definitely a period of turmoil from 1971 to 79 with General Idi Amin Dada, when he seized power over Uganda and definitely fell into some dark times. And then back in 1980, Milton Obote took it back over, and then there was some continuing fighting. But now there's a new rebel leader since 1986, and the population is about 47 million. And it's a presidential republic, and the whole country of Uganda is divided up into kingdoms. And the kingdoms they have kings, which mostly are just cultural figureheads, not really so much political power. And there's 5 major kingdoms within Uganda. And on our tour, basically we start here in Kampala and we traversed the southern part of Uganda, not the northern part. So we were right down here in the southern, if you can see my cursor. When we arrived in Entebbe, and then we traveled up to Kampala. So when we got to the Entebbe airport, this is our transportation, and actually these were our transportation throughout the whole tour. So we're on a series of these great land cruisers, and then we arrived pretty late at night, and we showed up at the Latitude O Hotel. It was a gorgeous hotel. This is my bathroom and the bed with my stuff in it. And then some of our travelers actually got to Entebbe earlier, and they did some touring on their own, and they saw this famous shoebill bird, which a lot of us were pretty jealous about. But the next morning is when our tour really began. We had some breakfast, and then we had our briefing at the hotel. And this is our picture of all of us meeting our guides and briefing. And then we did a tour. So what you're going to see now in these next series of slides, and then Flaxen, if there's any point that you want to pop into and talk about what you're seeing and what you thought in your first trips through the area, definitely join in. But this is the downtown Kampala. Kampala is the capital. So, it's a standard big city. But a little bit different. This lady, there's a series of these workers that help clean the roads with these grass brooms. So we have this big major city and with some contrast mixed in. Typical housing in the surrounding areas. And then I wanted to point this out because there's so much construction happening everywhere we went in Uganda. And the scaffolding, these pieces of wood, they're eucalyptus trees and trunks and branches from the eucalyptus tree. And so we saw this everywhere. And then this is a forest of the eucalyptus as during our trips. You can see how straight and thin they are and how they grow them. You'll see all sorts of things on the side of the road. The stores, most of their products that they sell are outside the front of the store, not necessarily inside the store. So everything you see is just right alongside the roads. And those are bunk beds. Notice there's not 2, but 3 or 4 levels of bunks. And you got your appliances and kitchen supplies, your furniture. Sometimes there's covered, sometimes it wasn't. And so if you're a savvy traveler or savvy buyer in Uganda, you kind of pay attention to what furniture has been covered and what hasn't been covered because of the rainy season. And as we keep going, you'll see motorcycles everywhere. Motorcycles is the main transportation. There's traffic laws, but hardly anyone ever follows them. And you'll see multiple people on motorcycles carrying anything and everything on them.
Yeah, I'll just add real quick, Kate, that
Yeah.
motorcycles are called border to borders, or they're called boda to bodas. And
Yes.
they literally weave in and out of everything. And there's about 7 million people in Kampala, correct?
Yeah, 7 million people in Kampala during the day, and then 3 million people at night, because a lot of people come into Kampala during the day and then leave. Yep, and all you see are these boda bodas everywhere, and the boda boda drivers, there's not a specific license. If you have your driver's license, then you can become a boda boda driver. You just put on a vest and say that you're a boda boda driver. And that is also where most traffic accidents occur, or with the boda bodas. Couple of these pictures, you'll see the ladies carrying things on their heads. You'll see that everywhere along the tour. This was a snapshot of the traffic and all of the motorcycles and cars. Everyone just trying to weave in and out and get to where they need to go. Alongside the road, you'll see construction materials. So these were grass thatches that you could use for fencing or on tops of roofs. And this is one of the other markets as you're driving through and looking at just people, the markets and all the little umbrellas, everyone's selling something. And this is one of the busier times. Was slow moving through that area. And then bicycles, everybody carries whatever they can possibly can on a motorcycle, a bicycle, anything with wheels. So you can't see it. This is actually 2 people pushing these pineapples up the hill, but you see his boots kind of back there, but the girls, I know, she looks like she's pushing all those pineapples, but there are two people doing it um, up the hill. And streets, a lot of them aren't paved, a lot of dirt roads everywhere you go. And there's a phrase, Flaxen, what do they call it with all the potholes on the dirt roads?
Oh, it was so cute. They kept saying, "Are you enjoying the Ugandan massage?" Because you're literally just going like this. It was really fun. It wasn't hardship at all, but the roads there definitely, I think I would say 90% of them were not paved. So
yes, yep. Water is an issue all over the country, so they'll catch it where they can. And then you have these gorgeous handmade beds. We saw these a lot on different people selling them. And then you also see on the backs of motorcycles as well. Mannequins, this wasn't a great picture of it, but one thing I wanted to point out with the mannequins and the clothes they're very hippie. So I don't know if you can see her hips, but most of the the female mannequins all had really wide hips, and I loved it. I thought it was really interesting. And then of course, just carrying more things on the road. Here is a great example of those tires on a motorcycle. So we saw tire shops everywhere, and people got flat tires often with those dirt roads. So there's the guy on the motorcycle. Then you've got your kitchen supplies. With these stores, usually one store would specialize on one thing. So whether it's all kitchen or all furniture or all pineapples or whatever the case would be, they would focus their store on that one product. Alongside the road, you could also buy things, and these were plants for landscaping purposes that you could just pull over on the side of the road and pick them up, or pots. Little blurry photos, but another thing with traffic, you literally find a seat in a car wherever you can. So we saw a lot of people perched up on vehicles, or carrying. Again, these are greens like spinach that they were carrying on the back of the motorcycle. One of the stops we made was to the Baha'i House of Worship, and the Baha'i houses of worship are open to all for prayer and reflection. There's 14 houses of worship in the world, and this was the first one in Africa. And when they're built, it's a 9-sided shape, and they typically have 9 sides, 9 pathways, and 9 gardens. For them. We weren't allowed to take pictures inside the house of worship, so I don't have any photos of that, but we walked a pretty path on the way up, saw a jackfruit tree and some jackfruit, and then just could take some pictures on the outside. But it was a really pretty place. Do you have anything extra, Flaxen, to add to that one?
it was super calming, and I think I thought they might have said that it was the only one that was on the continent of Africa. Like there's one on each continent. So I
think you're right. Yeah. Yep. And then after that, we went to the Uganda National Mosque. And this is us taking picture on our way in. So, you're going into a mosque, so you had to be covered, our hair covered and our legs covered. So if they weren't, they covered for us. And so they dressed us before going into the mosque. And then we walking up the steps into it. This is the inside. It was huge. I believe they said 20,000 people can fit inside during prayer inside this mosque. Beautiful windows. So it was empty, obviously, when we were there. And this is the largest mosque in East Africa, and it's actually the 3rd largest mosque in the world.
Carpet was absolutely gorgeous and thick.
Yeah.
As well as the beautiful chandeliers and everything.
Oh, the chandeliers were stunning. They're huge, and it was just gorgeous. And there's Flaxen as we were leaving, and then there's our group photo leaving the mosque. The Kampala school, I think, was one of our favorite stops, was to visit the school. It's a Christian comprehensive mixed day and boarding school. So there were some students that were there that would spend the night, and then some students that would come in during the day. And this is the outside of the school, some of the paintings on the walls. This is the inside. These are the dorms right here up above, and there's some administrative buildings down below. And we're in a just listening to, this is a principal here in the middle, listening and learning about the school. This is one of the classrooms. The desks were pushed back for other activities, but we took a picture of a few of us sitting in the desks in the classroom. And the shoes, you're not allowed to wear shoes inside the room, so you take them all off. This is a typical woman's dorm room. As you can see, there's a number of beds. I mean, there's a 3-stack bunk bed there in the room, and those are some of the ladies in the room. It was so much fun to talk with them. They loved getting their picture taken and chatting with them.
Yeah, they really. I'm sorry, Kate.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, like one of the things that really came across to me was how important education is to the citizens of Uganda. I love they had their missions, and when you just talked to them or read them, it was very clear that they view education as super, super important. And English is the national language of Uganda, so you can almost tell who's gone to school and who hasn't based on whether or not they speak English and how well. So that part was really interesting. And when we talked to the students, they performed for us, which was fabulous. And when we talked to them, they talked a lot about their hopes and dreams of what they wanted to accomplish. And their school day was pretty intense schedule, 80-minute periods, and all different types of topics.
Yeah, definitely. And then one photo I had earlier, there was picture of a cooking stove on wood, and that is how they cook their meals at the school. They use a wood fire and cook their food just in regular pots on the wood fire. So just showcasing that too. And then near the end, we were just talking with them and having fun, and it was really fun to see the personalities come out. And then we have a group photo of a bunch of us here. And then, of course, we have to get in our Beeves Love Travel sign here, because of course we love traveling. And then that was me on the ground with some of the students. And this is a picture that I took. And then at the end, just showing there's Flexen talking with a lot of the students here at the end. So it was a really great visit. We all enjoyed our time at the school. One of the places too we visited was the King's Palace. This is the King's Palace. It's the end of what they call the Royal Mile. This spot right here, this parking spot is only for the king. I learned that by accidentally putting my foot in it, and the guy told me, nope, it's just for him. So this is the King's Palace. And then I'm highlighting the fence because this is a traditional fence. I just thought it was really interesting, a traditional fence in Uganda. So this is the reeds, the grass reeds that you can harvest in many places around, and it is traditional fencing. So they have it around the King's Palace. And on this property too is the military, and this is military housing. And we did ask if there was running water and plumbing in the housing, and we don't think that there was. Did you hear a response on that one?
Yeah, no, but what I did hear, which was interesting, was that the military are very thankful to have that housing because they make a wage, and they have a free place to live, and they have places for their gardens and everything. So while we might look at that and compare it to military housing, say in the US, it's they were very thankful to have this housing and have this stint at guarding the palace.
Yeah, it was a really great job to have. And then while we were here, we visited they're selling this traditional art that is made in Uganda. They paint on what's called bark cloth. So the bark cloth is an ancient craft from the Buganda people, which is that region that Uganda was named after. And It's from the mutaba tree, and they harvest the bark off the tree, and then they beat it. Here's a picture of him. They beat it with a wooden mallet to give it that soft, fine texture. And it's traditionally worn for coronations and healing ceremonies and funerals and cultural gatherings. And they also use it for curtains and mosquito screens and bedding. So they use it for all sorts of things. And they were the local people, some of the artists then painted on it for us or for anybody. And they're quite beautiful. There's all sorts of different things to get. So that was a fun, one of the few shopping opportunities to have on the tour, but definitely worth it. And so then we headed up, and I will say I'm not highlighting everything we've done on this tour because we did do a lot, but these were some of the key points. I say almost everything. We're heading up to Kabali Forest after this, and our next hotel is called the Tarako Treetops, and this is just some of the landscape that we see on our way up to the Kabali Forest. Pointing out here, I thought this was interesting too because it's something I didn't think about at first. This is a butcher on the side, and I was asking the guide, how long do they hang the meat out? And he's like, well, you have to remember there isn't refrigeration. So what they do is they'll get a cow or whatever the animal might be, and they'll start early in the morning with it, and then they'll quarter it out and sell it throughout the day. And so the price of the meat will fluctuate also by what time of day that you're shopping and where you get it, because they have to get rid of it by the end of the day because they don't have a way really to keep it cold. So you really definitely the goal is to make sure everything is gone by the end of the day. We did see some people wheeling just ice, and then the ice was used for other things, for drinks, but a lot of the homes didn't have refrigeration, and a lot of the businesses didn't have refrigeration. This one I took, you see this lady here kind of further down in turquoise. I wish I got a little closer picture of her, but we were driving. And a little bit of this dress here, but definitely this dress here in turquoise with the gold sash. The traditional dresses changed by what region of Uganda we were in. And this was a traditional dress of this region of this tribe here. And those dresses, about 5 meters of cloth are used to make the dresses, and that's not including the sash. And they wear them for Sundays, for church, or for special occasions as well. And so sometimes they, depending on where you were in Uganda, they might have the pointy shoulders, or they'll have flatter shoulders, or different things will be slightly different by what region you're in. This is a guy walking his cows. Traditional cows are the ones with these big long horns. And there are some people that do still in Uganda walk, pilgrims that walk their cows through Uganda. And there's not very many, but they used to do that practice and just kind of maneuver through the country with their cows. These guys live locally with their cows, but when you see the ones with the super long horns, that is a cow from that region. This was a plywood factory. I just thought that was interesting, especially with Oregon State and all of our wood science that comes out of our university. Another example of motorcycle, carrying what you can on your motorcycle. This is one of our few paved roads. We stopped and had tea on the way up to the forest. And this is Danielle. She was a great journaler during our whole trip. And then some, just that's how you get around, is walking. So walking along the road with their stuff. This is our first our car. We had a flat tire. These roads, you never know. So that was pretty fun to have a flat tire. And then we had to pretend that it was a big deal. It wasn't a big deal at all.
I mean, I think it was fixed in like 5 minutes. So I was like, this is so great.
If that, it was fast. You'll see again cows and walking on the side of the road. And I asked you with our guides, are they ever worried about them getting hit by cars? Because the cars go pretty close to these animals. And they said, nope, these cows are so well trained. as you're walking, they just move out of the way, and they know, they train their cows even just with different words and cues, and the cows follow and listen. And so they're just out going where they need to go. We're starting to see some tea fields. This is tea bushes down below on the ground. And of course, you see a lot of bananas. And this here's a little, if they were out, they'd be selling bananas at the roadside stand. This was a mosque as we were driving through too. Wherever we were going, the kids would always come out. So it was great to see a bunch of kids looking. There's a phrase in Uganda for white people, and it is, I don't remember how to pronounce it, Mzungo. If there's one white person, you're a Mzungo. If there's more than one white person, it's a group of white people, or a Bazungo. There are many white people. So whenever we come by, they'd always say Mzungo, Mzungo, or Bazungo, Bazungo. This is another traditional house. Just fields. It's beautiful country. Yep, go ahead.
If I may,
Yeah.
One of the things, if you could go back once, or yeah, just keep going, that's fine.
That one?
Just, everywhere we went, it was so beautiful, whether it was plantations or forested land that was like in eucalyptus, as in, almost they were plantings for commercial harvests and everything.
Yeah.
So I was just so taken by the beauty of the land, how green and rich and wonderful it was. But I was actually super impressed, and my heart really felt so open with all of the people. Like, so many of the people would wave at us as we went by. The kids would wave, and say hello. They practice their English if they do it, and it was really a beautiful experience.
It was. Earlier I had a photo. We had another car. We had a little radiator issue, but that was again fixed in 30 seconds and then moved on. And now we're getting up to into the forest area, and this is when we start seeing all the baboons. So you might see this little guy here down and below. And yes, I see. Oh, great. A question in chat. So at this point, how many days are you into the trip? Oh, good. 3 to 4. Thank you, Flaxen. And if anybody has questions, I forgot to say at the beginning, chat is open. So feel free to type in chat what questions you might have. Here's trying to get a picture of that little baby hanging on mama's belly. And so baboons in this area, they were along the roadside. They're up on the hillside. So definitely this one jumped. We were stopped looking at some other baboons, and this guy decided just to jump right on the hood of the car. So I got a picture of him jumping. So he's sitting on the hood of the car, and you can see some other ones over on the side, just kind of looking at us like, what are you doing? And then he jumped off, and then there's some more mamas and their babies walking by. And baby baboons they're kind of cute and kind of ugly at the same time. They're funny. So this is our road into our next hotel, the Tarako Treetops. And as we were driving by, we saw these cute little guys on the side of the road saying hi. And this little one, I was talking to our driver, and he's like, yeah, he might be giving you that look, but you get out of the car and talk to you, and he's quite a character. So it was fun that our guides definitely knew the people, knew the area that we were going to. This is a traditional house and family that's living near our where we're staying. This is a different style. This is actual brick house. The people, if you want a brick house, traditionally you actually make your bricks. So they'll start off and they'll get the clay and the dirt and they'll mix it, and then they'll first start with more of a hutch, a thatched roof, stick and mud house. And then if they want to move to a brick house, they live in this temporary house while they're making all of their bricks for their next house. And then they'll build the next house. And it takes obviously a lot of time for that process.
Now, one of the things I'll just add real quick was that they were very clear that mostly what happens in the house is sleep.
Yep.
You know, there's a latrine building out back, there's cooking and everything out back. So whether it's an individual house like this or, you know, several houses together.
Yes. And then they'll build as they have the money. So they don't save up for a whole bunch of money and then build the house. As they have $10, they'll build $10 worth of house. So they just keep building as the money comes in. I don't have any pictures of our next hotel just because of time, but it was beautiful. It's called Traco Treetops. It was literally in the trees, and some of our guests had monkeys outside their windows. And it's a great pool. We all loved the pool when we got there. And in the evening that first night, a bunch of elephants or a couple elephants went through and knocked over some trees and some of the neighbors that walk through the banana plantations and stuff. So you don't know what you're going to see when you're there, right? So our chimpanzee trek, this is how we started off. Is a great trek. It was more strenuous than we anticipated on the trek, but we had a lot of fun on the tour. And we started off learning about the vegetation before we did see these guys, but not right away. We learned about the vegetation and the trees and different plants and things that they ate. And this is some of the pictures of the trees as we went through. This was marks from an elephant that was through in the area, similar to like here. You might be familiar to, elk or deer making marks on our trees. All the vines, a liana vine, and this is a pepper, wild pepper, like that we eat on a dinner table. I mean, it's in a shell casing, the red casing, but inside is the hard black pepper. And that's us walking through the trees. We have to watch out for ants. These guys, if you hit an ant, you know it, they hurt. You got to watch out for the ants. A little up close of all these little ant trails. And then we do start seeing some chimpanzees, and they blend in really well with your surroundings. So, but you can get close to them. There's one that went up into the trees when we went by. This guy was letting us know that he ruled the forest, and we respect that. And then he was fine. He's calm. He's just chilling, hanging out. He's watching us. We're watching him. And that day when we saw the chimpanzees, they were doing what they called checking the perimeter. The chimpanzees were checking the perimeter. So chimpanzees can move they typically move about seven or so kilometers a day. But today, on that day, about every month or so, the chimpanzees check out their territory. So they rove the perimeter of their territory, seeing if there's any other families of chimpanzees or groups that are trying to invade their territory. So the day we were there, they were moving. And I think we're all surprised about how fast chimpanzees can move through the forest. And if you come across a mom and some babies, they do not want to be seen, and they really move through the forest. This I highlighted, there's a chimpanzee hiding here in the bush. Just want to show that if you don't know what to look for, then you could walk right by them and not know that they're there. But then, these ones are used to seeing people in the area, and we're respectful of their space. So they just go about their day when we're there. And
real quick
yeah,
that that's partly why the trek was challenging, because they were moving so much. We had to kind of keep up with them, which is going to be different than when we talk about the gorillas. And then the other thing is just that not only were they moving, but they were loud.
yeah,
I mean, they were
yeah,
all screaming out to each other and everything. It was wild. It was fabulous. It was just really
yes. Yeah, that was. They were, I'm glad you said that. They were loud, and they they would do all of what chimpanzees do, just we're just observers watching them. So if they got mad at each other, they got mad at each other, and they would yell at each other, and they'd make noises, and they'd thump, and then they run, and they bang sticks together, and then they were really fascinating to watch. This little guy though just wanted to lay on his back and take a nap. And then so you saw a mix. You saw a mix of them running through the forest, and then saw a mix of them just kind of staying there. And we saw quite a few chimpanzees when we were there. So that was pretty neat. And you do divide up into groups. So we were in 2 different groups to go see them. And we did see there's a rare bird in that area called the green Peter, I think it is. And we were lucky enough to actually see it on our trek, and very few people get to see it.
And it's the
No one got a
bird.
picture of it, of course.
No, but it's the bird that's right above your right shoulder. On
Oh,
the
yes,
wall,
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So that was pretty fun to see it on the trip. And then when we said we saw it, some people didn't believe us. Like, no, we really did see it. Then after the chimpanzee trek, we had a traditional meal. This is at Tika's place. And so we're sitting around having a shared meal, and a variety of different root vegetables and different things. I mean, you have like plantains and squash, and there was really great red peanut sauce with beef in it, and then there's another beef stew. Oh no, that had chicken in it, and then beef stew. All the food was actually quite good. And I will point out though, for Ugandans, they don't have all of these when they have a meal. Like you don't sit down and have multiple options when you eat. Usually you'll have just like one. You might have mashed plantains with just the beef stew, and that's all you have to eat. You don't have that and the other roots and everything else. So, but the food was good. Do you have anything you want to add about the food?
Yeah, I'll just say that. So this is on a Lazy Susan table, and
Oh, yeah.
all of these dishes had the tops on them, and we weren't allowed to lift them up until we lifted them all up at the same time. Because what they do in Uganda is you first do taste, which means as the plates go around, you take like a spoonful and put it on your plate. And then once you decide, oh, I really want those beans with the peanut sauce, then you can go back and have more. So.
Yes, yes. First you taste and then you eat. But for all of us, we we tasted and ate at the same time because we were full. But it was good. Then after that, we went and we planted some trees, which was really nice. We're trying to help with deforestation, so we went with a group and planted trees, and then of course had another great interaction with kids. This is Margot. And then I of course have to add some more fun photos with Flexen. And then this guy, he just cracked me up with these white sunglasses. He was so funny. But I wanted to point out in this early picture, you see these white sunglasses right here? Somebody ended up with them at the end, which was really great. He loved them and he was very thankful that he was given those sunglasses. And then the next day we went on, which simply just call a nature walk. It was the Kabali Association. And this is the same association that we did the tree planting with. And even before we left, we all just stood and were staring at these birds. These are these, oh gosh, I just blinked it.
Yellow village weaver birds.
Yes, the village weaver birds. They're little yellow birds right here. You might see some of them right below their nests. And this is what the weaver bird nest looks like. And I think there's the males stay outside and the females are in the nest. And those were just really fun to see, those little weaver birds. Easy to point out. One of the few things that are easy to point out as you're driving through Uganda. And then on this nature walk, that's a Turako bird. I don't have a ton of bird photos, but we saw so many birds. We just, there's just only so many pictures you can put in a presentation. And then that's us on the nature walk. And we did see these guys. These guys are the Ugandan national bird, and it's the gray-crowned crane. And that was super special to be able to see. We were so excited to see them. They are beautiful, beautiful birds. And then they flew away. And thank you. This photo is from one of our travelers, Wilson. A lot of these photos are from Wilson. A lot of epiphytes around the area. And these are the trees that we planted the day before. A beetle, that we saw. This guy, you'll see a lot of handmade carvings on the trip, and he was carving out of wood here as we were walking by. Looks like he was going to carve a bird, I think it is. And then just some other just cool plants, berries, of course, being in Oregon, and had to take a picture of berries. And then snails, and then all kinds of great things. The peppers that we saw the chimpanzee trek. This I want to take a picture of because he is like a cooling hut, really, as they're working in the fields to hide from the sun. They have all these just little shelters. And now we start seeing there's something in the tree, and I'll just sit there and see if you can find it because I did not see it at first. And then it's like, oh, there you are. There's one of the monkeys. So we start seeing the monkeys in the trees on this nature walk. And we did get to see definitely a few different types of monkeys, and I'm working on this whole huge species list that we had, but a lot of them are these colobus monkeys. I think this was like the red tail colobus monkey. And there's this guy hanging out in the trees here. And then this day, there's a few different species that we saw. And they were really fun to watch. We just kind of sat and watched them swing from tree to tree. It was really fun.
It was hard to take pictures of them because they really moved. So
yeah.
kudos to Wilson for snapping these. Let me tell you, it was so great.
Yeah.
We kept saying, Wilson, did you get that one? Did you get that one? One thing I will make a note about these monkeys is that their tails, they don't use their tails to hold on to things. They just use their tails for balance because their tails don't have the ability to wrap around.
Yeah. So those are really fun to see. And we hung out with the monkeys for quite a while, and then we're moving up to Queen Elizabeth National Park. And this is another Wilson shot. Thank you, Wilson. I just loved it. On our way up, we stopped and learned about the tea, and these are tea bushes, and these are the people harvesting the tea, and they're basically clippers with a container attached to it, and then they clip the tops of the tree bushes, and then they dump them into the baskets on their back. And they told us that they could fill one of these baskets in less than 5 minutes as they're working. So they're clipping and then dumping right in the back in the basket. And sometimes they clip by hand. And then we got to trying to do it, and that was a lot of laughs trying to do it. And then of course more cute kids, because there's just so many of them. And they love getting their picture taken, and they love seeing their pictures afterwards. So we try to do a lot of that. So there's even Flex and more great pictures. This is another spot. I didn't have a chance to put it in the slideshow, but we stopped on the side of the road and learned about how vanilla, there's a vanilla plantation, and you have to hand thank you, hand pollinate each one of the vanilla flowers. And so we stopped in one of a young man showed us how he hand pollinates the vanilla flowers. And that was really interesting. This is another little guy carrying his firewood back to his home. This is us going through the equator. We're at the top of the equator, and we're moving towards Queen Elizabeth National Park. And these were our first 2 elephants. So we were all very excited to see the first 2 elephants as we were entering Queen Elizabeth National Park. And then warthogs, at least in our car, warthogs became like the signature animal that we were all really excited to see. So we were all very excited when we saw a bunch of warthogs.
Because
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Kate. I just want to say about the warthogs. I never really had a thing for warthogs, but I do now. That's because they have such attitude that, and like if they see you or whatever, they don't like you, they turn around and run away from you, and their tails stick straight up, which made me laugh every time.
They were really cute too. And yes, we did get to see lions. We got to see quite a few lions, actually. They were sleepy lions, but they did get up and walk around a little bit, not much. Yes, we saw baby warthogs too. Question that came in. This is a good perspective of kind of how we saw the lions. So we're in these vehicles with the roof popping up, and they're just right outside your car. This guy just took a nap underneath the car for a little while. Or lady, I think it's a lady. Yes, lady. That's us. Of course, you have to have a little fun when you're in this situation too, because you're standing there, looking at lions, and you're there for a little while, so you goof around too. I love this guy with his mohawk. This is a Wilson photo, just taking a picture of how big their paws were. So yes, a lot of sleeping did occur. They had a big water buffalo. We saw what was left for, the day before. And so these lions just had full bellies, and they were just relaxing and in the sun and doing a little bit of playing, and having fun. This, I just want to showcase how much they can blend into their surroundings. Like, he's sitting at the bottom, but man, they just blend right in. This is another one. There is a lion in this photo, and he's right there just taking a nap. So it's like they hide, and they hide so easily. Another sleepy lion. And then some yawning lions as well. He looks like he's roaring, but this was a yawn. But it was really fun to see those massive teeth, and then more sleeping. And then this one, you can tell he had a meal recently, got some leftovers underneath his chin on all the bugs on his face. And then there's us taking pictures of the lions in the car. A lot of antelope too, throughout this whole region. So got all kinds of cobs and bushbacks and antelope families. So there's water buffaloes here. We learned a cool thing about, did most people take real cameras rather than phones? I will say almost all of us had our cell phones, and there were 2 people with real cameras. Well, Flaxen, you had a point and shoot, and I also had a point and shoot that got some photos, but majority of us just had cell phones. And then two good cameras in the mix. And this is a flicker. So some of these photos are some of mine from my cell phone. Some of them are from my point and shoot. Some of them are from Wilson or Jeff, who had big cameras with big lenses. So there's a mix of different things that you're seeing here.
But we were so close. We were so close that really,
yeah.
I mean, some of the ones of like the kingfishers that you had and that kind of thing, that was nice. And
yeah,
we were so close to everything. You didn't need the big lenses.
Right. Unless you're a birder. If you're a birder and you really want photos of birds, then definitely bring a lens. But for these guys, you don't really need it. I want to point out the buffalo, they're usually in a herd unless they're an older male. The older male buffaloes, they actually get kicked out, and they get separated from the herd, and it's usually, and they're in groups of 2, and they just kind of stay just the 2 of them until the end of their days. So if you saw two alone, you knew that they got kicked out of their herd, and they're on the older ends of life, which I thought was pretty interesting. And there are some lizards and iguana things. I think this is like an iguana that we saw.
It's a monitor lizard.
That's what it is, monitor lizard.
It was so cool. So you just need to know that the head of this thing is about 1 foot long. So the whole body was like 4 feet long. That was a big lizard.
It was a big lizard. Yeah, and Audrey saw that as we were driving through. She's like, wait. It's like, oh, good find. This is at our safari camp. These are the lodges. So each one of these little huts, you had a hut to stay in. And this is the one location where you cannot go to and from your hut when it's dusk or dark outside. So you have to be escorted to your hut at sundown, like at 7, from 7 to 7. Basically, you cannot leave because you have free roaming animals all through this area. And we heard hippos. Some people think they heard some lions. We heard hyenas. There's definitely things that are just free roaming all in this area. So when it's dark, you do not leave your hut unless you have a guide. And so that lake is a salt lake, and these are a bunch of pink flamingos that tend to migrate down to that salt lake. We had some beautiful dinners outside at this place. Oh, it was so much fun. We did a bush dinner, and we did this dinner, and it was quite gorgeous. So then we're moving on at 6:22. So of course, there's so many pictures, I'm running late. But then we went to the channel, and this was amazing for wildlife photography and just seeing all the animals. This is where we saw our elephants, and this is where we saw our hippos. This is a Wilson photo. And they're just lazing on the edge of the channel. This channel connects Lake George and Lake, I wrote it down so I didn't forget it. Two different lakes, Lake George and Lake Edward. Lake Edward's to the west and Lake George is to the east. And that channel is just this wildlife mecca, the Kazinga Channel. And this was a boat trip that we did on the channel. And there's so many birds. Here's some little warthogs, and some older warthogs. They're so cute. Hippos, Nile crocodiles as well. This is a Nile crocodile. So there's water buffalo, Nile crocodiles, hippos, birds, and more birds. This is a smiling hippo. My daughter was very excited to see this picture. She loves hippos. And there's a little baby hippo. These are flickers on the back of the hippo. Just so much to see in this area. So that was really fun. The boat ride was amazing. This is a fishing village. The fishing village is right on right in the Kazinga Channel, and they live with all these animals. So in the fishing village, these animals are walking right up by their houses and they're living with them, and they've really found how to do it. Storks. This is an eagle. There's a close-up of him. Some other ungulates, more elephants. So this was a great day. Definitely one of the highlights of the tour. Taking some photos on the boat. And then on the way back, we saw a herd of elephants that crossed our road on our way back, and that was magical. Just to see how many elephants just walking by, because the wildlife, they'll go down to the water and then they'll leave from the water, and they do it all the time. And you see all these different elephant animal trails going to and from the water, and we got to see this herd of elephants come through.
Just a reminder that water is life, and so wherever you're going to have water, fresh water like that, you're going to have a lot of animals all mixed together. Superb.
Right. And the lions do come down to that area. We didn't see any. I wanted to point out there's a bunch of them hiding right here on the bush. That's just another example of how easily that they hide. So that was pretty awesome. So then we're on to Bwindi Impenetrable National Forest. And this is during our drive up. You're driving through the area and you're seeing all kinds of cool things. Like this banana guy, he drives to all these different villages and delivers the bananas. These are the bananas that more of the cooking banana that they use. And they have these abandoned huts too on some of these dirt roads. And they are literally used if you're traveling to and from an area, and it's getting dark or dusk, it gives you shelter. So they leave them there for you to have shelter for travelers. And we stopped at this fishing village, and all these great kids, great people at this fishing village, and the little kid. And we had, love this, no girls, no stress, on their wagons.
Yeah.
These great birds.
Yeah, there was the fishing village was of particular interest to me because when I worked with a lot of commercial fishermen, and it was very, very interesting to watch not only them coming in and their harvest, but also the selling of the fish and whether they sold it to a buyer who sold it to other people, or they sold it directly. And one of the things that we learned was that the seller really sets everything. Like if the buyer says, well, I only want to give you $1, let's just say, make it easy, for that fish, it was the seller that says, look, it's really $5. You got to pay me $5. So it's kind of an interesting, a little bit different cultural thing there.
Yeah, definitely. And then so this is right here. They're all looking at what the catch is from the day and then how much they're going to sell it for, and they're doing all the negotiations and the bartering back and forth.
And they lift their boats, the men, great, perfect timing, Flossie.
Yeah.
They lift their boats together onto the sand.
And they sang a song too as they did it. They had the songs and chanting. So I start in the water, and they stop. Like no matter who's at what boat, everyone will just stop. They'll go over to the one boat that needs lifted out of the water, and they bring out logs and they lay these logs on the sand. And then together they lift the boat and they put it up on a log, and then they roll it and they put down another log and they roll it up onto the sand, and they sing as they bring the boats onto shore. These are storks. To give you some perspective, these are huge birds. This hut is the same hut we're sitting under right here. So just to give you some perspective of how large these animals are, they were huge. And then these are some of the kids. These kids were playing with us and talking with us and running with us the whole time when we were at the fishing village. And this is a hospital, medical center at the fishing village. This is an example of one of the houses being built. So this is stage one of a house, of a structure being built. And then they bring in the mud and they bring in the sand, and then they cover those pieces of wood that way. And then they'll put in doors and then your tin roof. So here's the mud on top of that. And then another example of a brick house or a brick structure. This is more of like a store being built. And then also just so there is some money in certain areas. And when an area does have money, they do put up very modern structures. And this is another one, a church that was going up. And we are running low on time, but I'm going to still go. So we're just going to go a little bit past our 6:30 time here because we have to talk about the Batwa people and the cultural walk. And this is up in the Bwindi National Forest. The Batwa people up in Bwindi National Forest are a native people that lived in this forest for millennia. We don't really even know, forever, right? And they're, if you've heard of the pygmies, the pygmy people, that's another name for them because of their short stature. And in the early 1990s, that area in the Bwindi was declared a national park, and the Batwa people were removed from their native lands. And as you can imagine, things didn't go quite as well with the relocation, and there were all sorts of issues with the Batwa people having to leave. They didn't know anything about farming. They didn't know how to farm. They didn't know about school structure. They didn't know about government. They didn't know about anything. They lived in the forest, and so they were moved and put into these cities. And they were given some land to try to learn how to forest, but they didn't know how to do it. So they didn't always end up farming. They ended up, a lot of times begging, to be honest. So then in 2011, a group of Batwa, with support of some non-governmental organizations, went to the Uganda government and started trying to fight for their land back and trying to get some peace and some evictions. And there was some winning in courts. And then it wasn't even until recently where the Batwa people were able to kind of make their own money, and what they're doing it through tourism. So they're doing it through some of these tourist visits, and the money that they're able to make, they're able to keep within that community. So we had the opportunity to meet with the Batwa people and learn a little bit about how they live, and they're super, super amazing, super nice. In Uganda, they're not always well. I guess there's some prejudice against the Batwa people too, even within the Uganda people. So they had a lot of different stereotypes that they were fighting. And we asked them when we were there, is there anything we shouldn't talk to you about or shouldn't ask you about? And they're like, no, you ask us what other questions you want to ask us. Very nice. It was a great visit. A lot of our travelers are definitely moved by meeting the Batwa people. And so they took us and showed us some of their traditional ways of living and iron smelting and making bows and arrows. And we tried our hand at using their bows and arrows, and we all would have gone hungry if that was our way of survival. Some people did okay, but majority of us, we would have gone hungry. And then And so we just had time with them, and we learned they're doing crafts and selling crafts to earn money. So we bought things from them. They did a dance for us, and this is, you know, worth them working on their sewing machines and some of their crafts. You know, they do have some modern conveniences. Their cell phone sitting next to this old pedal. They were mostly these old pedal sewing machines that they used to make all their fabric crafts. And then so do you want to, Flaxen, do you want to add some more about the Batwa people?
No, I think you did a great job. You know,
Okay.
I think I was really taken with how engaging they wanted to be with the tourists. And
Yeah.
you had a picture of the king of the Batwa
Oh,
people.
yes.
And I will just say that he was in his 80s and he had became king in his 50s. So
It's back here.
he'd seen it all. And so we got a chance to
Him.
talk with him. Yeah, that's him. And we had a chance to talk with him a little bit, well, through an interpreter. And it was very, very interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, he was there from the beginning through all of this, right? Like all of these people were. So they were all lived in the forest, were pulled out, and now able to go back. So he has been through this whole transition. And when we were there, you know, it was just nice to be able to support them and hear their side of the story. Because there's, you know, it's always good to listen from them. So they danced for us. They showed us, they made fires with sticks, and it was really cool. And then we got to visit some other locals around the area. They're grinding, I think it was corn.
Millet. It was millet.
Millet?
Yeah,
Millet.
like millet flour.
Millet flour. Yep. And so we got to try to do it ourselves with, and this is what she does today. This is how she grinds her millet. It's not talk about, you know, back then. This is how she grinds her millet for cooking. And we were in her house. And then this is we were grinding coffee. So we put the coffee in this log that's been hollowed out, and the coffee beans go through it. It removes the husk or the shell from the coffee beans. And then we went in the hut and she roasted the coffee beans for us and then ground them and then sifted them and then made us all coffee. So it was really fun just to sit there from the start of grinding the coffee to the end to drinking the coffee. And that was another special experience. And then we got to walk through this community and walk through the town, the farms, and see the houses and walk along their trails. And that was pretty special. It was pretty special because you're just right there, you know, right where they live.
I'll just add that coffee is very, very important. So bananas, coffee, timber, I would say those are all really important commodities that they export.
Yes, yes. Very, and coffee is very important too socially. There's some social ceremonies that they do with coffee when they meet a friend and they have a meal with a friend. There's a whole ceremony with a coffee bean and chewing a coffee bean, which is interesting. This was great. This was Ride for a Woman, is a women's cooperative, and this cooperative is set up for women to be able to make some income for their families and to support their families. And it's started by one woman who literally saw the tourism industry and decided that she wanted to have some bikes and be able to provide bike tourism and fixing of bikes. And that's how it got started, and it grew into this cooperative of a whole of a well, I say 60 some women. I'm trying to remember how many, a lot of them. And they do all sorts of fiber arts and there is still that bike element and education and bring income into their families. So we visited with them before the gorilla trek and got a little overview. And then the next day we did the gorilla trek. So the gorilla trek, we also were divided up into two groups on the gorilla trek, and we were prepared because they told us ahead of time, you never know what you're going to face in terms of the walk. You don't know if it's going to be a long walk and really steep, or it's going to be a short walk and not very steep, because it depends on where the gorilla family is. And you obviously have to go to where the gorilla family is. Only these gorilla families, they have been habituated with people, but it's highly regulated. So you're only allowed to visit one family gets one visit a day and only for 1 hour. So multiple groups don't visit the gorillas. It's only one visit a day for 1 hour, and then that's it. So, which I think is great. And then we all hired porters, someone who can carry your bag and your backpack. We'd regardless if you needed a porter or didn't need a porter, it was one way of supporting the community and supporting the people and keeping poaching down on the gorillas. So porters, some of the porters were previously poachers, but they make more money by being a porter. And it's you're lucky to be chosen as a porter. You're put into more of a lottery system, and usually you only get to go out once or twice a month. So, so if you're and it's good money for porters. So it's definitely something that you want to be. One of our guides on our trip used to be a porter, and he did 500 gorilla treks when he was a porter. So it was interesting. He's gone on now to do research on gorillas, and now he's gone into tourism. But that was pretty cool. So seeing these gorillas in the wild was just amazing. It's hard to describe. When we went, Flex and I were in the same group, and when we first approached the gorilla, this daddy silverback, he let us know that he was a dad, and he let us know that he was the head of the family, and he kind of ran by us making some noise and showing his teeth. And our guide was like, don't run, you don't want to run, you just stand there. And we just stood there, and he just ran right by us and then stopped and laid on the ground like this. And then that's where the whole gorilla family stayed for quite a while. So there was some moms and some kids, and this is the silverback. There's one silverback. This kind of gives you some perspective of how close that you can be with the gorillas. A respectable distance, you still can see them. I mean, still pretty close, but definitely you do give them distance. And we sat in the ground with them. So we just sat with them and watched them as they napped and groomed and just did what they did. And so it's one of those things that's hard. It's hard to describe the experience. It was pretty magical.
Pretty much a dream come true, I think. You had to stay 30 feet away from them, 10 meters. And you had to stay, you had to have masks on because, of course,
Yes.
our closest genetic relatives. So, we can give them things that we don't need to give them. So,
Yeah.
but it was super cool to have them kind of be moving around and then have a little dog love pile on top of each other, training and just kind of taking a nap. And then at one point they were like, okay, well, we're done napping, so we're going to go eat a little. So they went over to eat. And then they just turned around and walked away. The magical hour.
It was quite magical. And even our guides beforehand, before we were with the gorillas, you're learning about the gorillas, you're learning about the chimpanzees and all the animals around you. And they're telling us that the animals, I think it was the gorillas, if I'm remembering right, if they're not feeling that great, they tend to go to certain plants. If they have certain respiratory issues that the gorilla is having, then they go to other plants. Like they have this medicinal knowledge of the forests and of the plants. And they found trends of, how a gorilla might be feeling of what, and then what they might go and eat. So I thought that was super interesting too. And yeah, and I mean, yeah, you just kind of walk. And we were lucky for us, our gorilla trek, it ended up being an easy trek. And ended up being, we walked an hour. We had to drive for an hour or so to get there. And then we walked a little bit over an hour or so. And it is a forest where they're whacking the machetes in front of you to be able to get through. It's dense. It's a dense forest. So you are climbing over and under things, and they are taking some vegetation down. And then you start seeing signs of the gorillas. You start seeing their poop, and you start seeing where they've been and in their trails. And so you're finding them. And and in the morning too, there's trackers who go out first, and the trackers go out and they find the different families. And then the trackers then communicate down to the guides, and then the guides divide up the people into groups. And I do believe that they do a little bit of like, okay, we think this group can handle a little bit longer of a hike. This group, we're going to have them go to a little bit of a shorter hike. And I think they do a little bit of this visitation management, I should call it, to it. But it does allow you, they say about, I think if I remember, it was like 98% of the people who go on the trek see the gorillas and they're successful. So, I mean, very, very high likelihood that you are going to have this experience when you go on the trek. And I just love the fact that you can see the silver on his back, and that's why he's called a silverback. Yeah, it was quite great. He sat there and farted for us a few times. We laughed. You know, it was great. All different sides of a gorilla. And yeah, so then that was an awesome experience. And then at the end, after the gorilla trek, you know, we went back to our hotels, and then we showered and changed, and we then afterwards went to back to the women's cooperative and visited with them more, all the different things that they do at the cooperative. And then we danced with them, which was quite magical and fun and amazing. And then after the dancing, there's flaxen dancing. It was so much fun. Then after the end of it, that was the end, our last full day. And then the next morning, we took a very like a 8-seater plane back to Entebbe, and then we started the trek back to the United States. So and I'll say our flights, the way we worked them, they were able to work them out, which was awesome. We flew from Portland 10 hours to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam 10 hours to Entebbe. So 2 flights, 2 long treks, and we were there. And yeah, so it was not too bad, but it was an amazing trip. So we're 15 minutes over time, but I'd love to stay and answer any questions that anybody has about the tour. It was pretty varied, well organized, and interesting. And yeah, it is great. We are doing this trip again in 2024. It's add-ons. Some people stayed and they did more northern Uganda on their own. There's some beautiful waterfalls and lakes. And if you go more north, you see a little bit of variety of other animals too. I think more north, you can actually see the giraffes more north, and I don't recall if you can see zebras more north, but yes, zebras too more north. Where we were in the southern part of Uganda, there weren't any giraffes or zebras, so we didn't see those. But if you go up more north, then you can. And they did it on their own. Yeah, you could do it on your own. But yeah, it was really great.
The only thing I'll quickly add is we had the good fortune of running into I call her the Jane Goodall of Uganda at the airport. She was the first veterinarian for the African Wildlife Authority, and she was so kind, and she signed books, and said a lot about her journey, and her book is fascinating. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking about going on this trip, that you get the book ahead of time. And because I didn't, okay, so do better than me, and learn a lot about the good and the challenging parts, and why they have set up this system to welcome travelers to their country, and to do it in a way that really, I don't know if I want to assign value, but kind of better than some other countries, maybe, in that, they don't want to conservation and education is everything. So I'll just leave it at that.
And can I play off of that, Kate?
Yeah. Oh, wait, let me remind our viewers here. We have Sandy Doss. She's with Mayflower Cruises and Tours, and that is the tour company who ran this tour.
And let me just say, you guys, it is I'm a parent of an OSU master's graduate here, and so this trip for me and the planning of this trip with Kate is very personal, as I am an honorary parent of a beaver. And but what I think is fun about what we saw tonight is it's really evidence of there's no words in a written itinerary that can kind of capture an experience like this. There's no pictures, that we can really see and really understand the context at the level that you all experience. And in coming into this trip for all of our new folks on the call today, we were told many times by previous group leaders what a life changing. They kept using the words life changing. This was a trip that was truly life changing, and I feel that maybe that's a little coined, but yet that seems to be the reflections I'm hearing from the both of you and from your group this year. One of the things I want to point out, a couple like little tidbits here. We do feel that the trip's title is a little misleading, because while you are having this incredible experience with wildlife, particularly the chimpanzees and the gorillas, as well as this incredible diversity that you see there in Eastern Africa, there's a cultural component, as Kate has been sharing with us. And I think the cultural component, I think, Cammie, you caught on to this, was as powerful and as, let's say, offering of perspective there in Uganda as the wildlife. So we might think that we're going to see the wildlife, but in reality, we endear and fall in love with the community that we meet.
Definitely, we're saying that a lot of people go to Africa for the wildlife, but they love it for the people. Like it was the people of Uganda are wonderful. They're so lovely.
This is emerging as like in the world of tourism. Uganda is still an emerging destination. So what you encounter is this enthusiasm for your presence in every one of these communities as you're there. And that brings me to kind of the final point that I wanted to make with everybody, is this is really a venture of conservation. The funding that comes into a trip like this is driven directly into these parks, into the communities, into the educational community. And so we're really making a difference as tourists. We are making a difference in Uganda. We are allowing these animals the opportunity to evolve. And many of the porters were maybe poachers at one time. Many of the guides went from poaching to guiding because it was more economically viable. And I do want to make a mention, Kate, last year when we did this presentation, we filled the trip up during the talk, and literally there was a wait list at the end of the call.
Yeah.
We do have a max limit, you guys, of 20 folks, and it is true. It's a true hard pencils down. If you are going to take this trip, even if you don't have your form filled out, it's all on the website, as Kate will share, but you'll want to send her your full name as it appears on your passport and your birthday. And we can start to kind of hold spots based on just that simple piece of information. So if you are finding that you are definitely in on this for this next year, I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and communicate with Kate, because we did run into a problem with that last year. It is a true experience. I always say, travel is this amazing thing, but then sometimes there's like travel. There's sometimes like it's just so beyond, and this is one of those so beyond. Less people see the gorillas than go to Antarctica. So that's pretty incredible. So that's the only thing I wanted to comment. I am in Portland, and my contact information is also on the brochure. So if you do have detailed questions that you have about the tour, I'm very happy to support anything that might come up for you.
Definitely. Yeah, it was pretty magical. I just put up here the gorilla trek is on our website. It's a little cumbersome to get to, just to be honest, but get involved. And then tour calendar link right here. And then in the tour calendar, all of our trips are in date order. And since we're down 2024, as this slowly is loading with internet. It's not at the bottom, but you'll be able to find it. July. There it is. Go check August. So, yep, I put a link in chat too for other questions, but yeah, it's a great trip. It's definitely there's one thing that Sandy said that made me I don't
Kate,
remember. I don't.
What was the weather like for you all?
The weather was gorgeous. Actually, it was perfect. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. You could wear pants. You could wear shorts. You definitely dressed in your safari clothes. But you didn't also need to every day. So there were days that we could wear shorts, and there are days that we didn't have to wear khaki and brown, and we could be in other colors too. So it was, and if you go, we'll talk about packing and all that kind of stuff. But definitely I've learned a few things on this trip now going. But yeah, it was great weather, and the mosquitoes weren't too bad. The bugs weren't too bad at all. You know, at dusk when we were in the desert savanna area, that's where you notice the mosquitoes more than anything because we were eating outside for more reasons. But yeah, but everything was great.
I'll just say that there's way more mosquitoes in Oregon than were there in Uganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to a lake in Oregon in the summer, you're going to need a lot more mosquitoes. I'll just also offer a personal observation. You know, when I first heard about this trip, I was like, oh, you know, I don't know, I can't afford it, you know, all this stuff. And I woke up the next day and I was like, look, I need to do this before I die. You know, I really did. I'll just be honest with you. And it exceeded my expectations on every single level. It was a fabulous trip. It's so complicated, the whole area, what's going on around it and everything. And when you're there, none of those complications are a big deal. You're just there with the people in their lives, in their place, and with the animals in their lives, in their place. And so I'm happy to talk to anybody. I put my email in the chat. If anybody wants to talk to me, you know, not affiliated with OSU alumni or anything, although I'm a huge fan. I will say that I'd to talk to anybody. And I go there every year if I could, because I just think it's a fabulous experience all the way around. So thanks for having me, Kate.
Well, and thank you for joining us. Yeah, I love that you added in more things that I forgot about and things I didn't mention, and it was a great compliment, and I really appreciate that you're with us tonight. You know, there's a lot of things too that we didn't talk about. I mean, we learned about weddings, and we learned about families, and we learned about we had a discussion on polygamy. We had a discussion, so that there was a lot of discussions that we had when we were there. And you know, when you go into some of those discussions too, you go into them just asking questions, not judging, just asking questions with open ears, open minds, and just hearing about, oh, do you do it like that here? Why do you do it that way? Or why is that important? And so you give it, if you ask the questions and you have those conversations, and when you're there, you're going to get even more out of it, out of the tour. And the guides they were great. They were all well knowledgeable. I mean, a lot of them are researching different things on the off season. If they're researching gorillas, if they're working in tourism somewhere else, or, you know, so yeah, it was just really great. Great. Okay. Well, at that 1 hour long program turned to an hour and a half, we'll call it a night. And I had a feeling it would go over, but I didn't realize it would go over this much. But thank you everyone for joining us. And I'm going to skip my whole traditional end, but you can find us on Facebook, you can find us online, and that's our website. So thank you all for joining, and thank you Flexen and Sandy, and everybody have a great night. Goodbye.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.